Everybody. My name's Karen Anderson, and I'm one of the co-leaders of the Davis County Family to Family Network through the Utah Parent Center. And the Family to Family Networks are a statewide parent support network. It's run by volunteers. And the purpose is to educate, strengthen, and support families of people with disability, especially those on the wait list or on services with DSPD. So that's Division of Services for People with Disabilities. So we are the leaders, all have children with disability, and we try to link families to other resources, to local resources and services and disability friendly events. So we're really excited tonight. We have Rachel Reist with us, who is a licensed clinical social worker that works at Davis Behavioral Health. And I will let her introduce more of all of the wonderful things that she does.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's really good to be here, and I'm glad to be here with each of you. I've known Karen for several years now, and it's a delight to be able to support each of you as parents. And I think I'd like to just start by telling you a little bit about myself and how I became involved in mindfulness. My professional background is as a licensed clinical social worker, and I have worked with children and families at a community mental health setting for several years now. And pretty early on into my career, I started realizing that I didn't know how to take care of myself very well. So that led me to mindfulness and taking a mindfulness-based stress reduction class, which was really transformative. And from there, my path has expanded to professionally sharing mindfulness with others. And we are going to be having a largely experiential evening tonight. So I'd invite you as we go along to join for as much as you feel able to. And please let me know either by unmuting or by in the chat if you have any questions, any comments as we go. I have a few PowerPoint slides to guide us through, but we'll kind of be toggling back between just a few visual things on PowerPoint and then experiential practices. So I'm going to go ahead and share that PowerPoint with you now. And I do work at Davis Behavioral Health. I'm both at the Mindfulness Center that we have as part of our community prevention programming. I work with the schools, and then I'm also at the Children and Youth Clinic. And it's probably just helpful to say that I don't have any conflicts of interest in this presentation. This is all just information that's freely accessible, freely shared. And I'll let you know at the end about additional resources if you'd like to access anything additionally. So just a little outline of where we're heading tonight. I've just given you a little introduction. We're going to be starting with just a gentle settling practice called the stop practice. Then I'll say a little bit more about mindfulness and self-compassion. And then we'll do a little bit of mindful movement. And then we'll end with one final practice that's called the self-compassion break. And all of these principles are really here to support our resiliency, our ability to not only bounce back, but even grow from challenges, and to learn how to deeply listen to our needs and take care of ourselves. So that's where we are heading. So let's begin with a practice called the stop practice. And when you practice mindfulness, you are welcome to sit in whatever posture is comfortable for you. You're welcome to keep your eyes open or to close them. If you are sitting, it might be helpful to just bring your feet to be flat on the floor. Maybe just allowing your hands to rest in your lap, releasing your shoulders a little bit. You'll notice that I often close my eyes. That's just because it's what's comfortable for me and it helps me focus. But you do whatever's comfortable for you. I know this is a little different than if we were in a classroom together, so I'm going to trust you to take good care of yourself at any time. If you need to open your eyes, if you need to stretch, shift your posture, please just do that. So the stop practice is a pausing practice, which invites us to take a moment to be still and to check in. So we'll begin by just coming to stillness. Noticing the feet touching the floor beneath you, perhaps. Noticing the hands as they rest on the lap. And allowing the body to become as still as possible. The body is here in the present moment. The mind may or may not be. We're going to be practicing how to invite the mind to join the body here in the present moment. So with the stop practice, the S in stop stands for stopping and becoming still. And then we move to the T in stop, which stands for taking a breath. So with awareness, sensing into a full breath. And seeing if it's possible to just allow yourself to breathe however is normal and natural for you. Not having to control your breath in any way, just allowing yourself to breathe. And perhaps noticing where you can feel your breath most distinctly in your body. Maybe you can sense your belly rising and falling, or your chest expanding and letting go with each breath. Maybe you sense some subtle movements in the shoulders, or the air passing through the nostrils. Just noticing this breath. And then we move to the O in the stop practice, which invites us to kindly and gently observe without judgment what's happening for us in the body, in the heart, and in the mind. So beginning with the body, can you just gently notice any sensations that are present for you now? Sensations both pleasant and unpleasant, and more neutral. Perhaps sensing into the contact points between the body and the chair or the couch supporting you. Maybe there's a sense of pleasant heaviness, groundedness. Perhaps you notice as you scan your body that you sense some tension or some tightness in certain places. Or perhaps a sense of ease and spaciousness in other places. Maybe you notice that you're thirsty or hungry. Or maybe you just had a satisfying dinner and there's a sense of satiety. Just noticing without labeling the experience as good or bad, just noticing it for what it is right now. And then gently, as you are ready to, shifting to observe the heart, which is often associated with emotion. So noticing anything in the emotional realm that is present for you. Maybe there's a sense of deep emotional exhaustion Maybe there's some anxiety. Maybe there's a sense of calm and ease. Just noticing whatever is the case for you and allowing for there to be conflicting emotions as well. Without judgment, just gently tuning in and maybe giving any emotions that arise a little name. Just naming the emotions as you recognize them. Ah, anger, anger, or peace. And also noticing if the emotions are connected to any sensations felt in the body. Allowing them to be here without needing to fix or actually change anything right now. We're just tuning in. And then the last part of the O is turning to observe the thoughts in the mind. So watching your thoughts like clouds passing through the sky, just noticing whatever is on the mind right now. Maybe the space of your mind feels like a clear sky with very few thoughts. Or perhaps it's quite a stormy day up there. Maybe there's a lot going on, just recognizing that too. And allowing it to be. Recognizing that you have the capacity to observe your thoughts. And that some thoughts are just thoughts. They'll come, and if we let them, they'll float on by. And perhaps noticing any connection between the thoughts and the emotions. This interconnected nature of our body, our thoughts and our emotions. Just noticing. And then letting go of this observing and just taking another breath, resting here in your own experience as we prepare to move to the P in the stop practice, which stands for proceed. So having taken a moment or a few minutes to tune in, we might be in a better place to respond to what we truly need. Did you notice something in the physical realm of needs? Needs for rest or movement, hunger, thirst, that you could respond to? Or perhaps you sensed something emotionally, a need for some connection or comfort or care. Just noticing what you sense that you might really need. And then as part of the P, maybe taking the first step to meeting that need, even if it's just jotting down a little note of something you want to do after the presentation ends. Or by all means, feeling free to get up and get a drink right now if you need it. So as you're ready to, just gently opening the eyes, if they've been closed, and maybe stretching the body in any way that would feel good. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the screen here for just a minute. And I'd love to just invite you to, as you kind of refocus on the room around you and the screen in front of you, to just notice how you're feeling now. And if you'd like to, in the chat, just dropping a word or two to describe your experience with this practice. How was it for you? What did you notice? So feeling free to drop a word in the chat whenever you're ready. More centered. Thank you, Karen. Calm and focused. Like the clouds. That metaphor helps me too when I have a lot of thoughts going through and I need help getting out of the sticky thoughts. Like, oh, take a step back, let them be like clouds. Peaceful. Thank you, Patty. I also want to normalize for anyone, if you felt the opposite of calm or centered or peaceful, if that was challenging, that is truly okay. Maybe not pleasant, but it's truly okay. Whenever we practice mindfulness or self-compassion, which are really twins, they're two sides of the same coin, mindfulness and self-compassion. Whenever we practice, it really is okay however you feel. Whatever you feel, whatever you experience is just what you experience. We're practicing embracing all of life with this gentle present moment awareness. So, oh, thank you, Melinda. Noticing how distracted and scattered the mind is. Yes. I think if I asked everyone to raise their hand if they experienced any mind wandering during that practice, we'd have it probably most, if not all, raise their hands. So normal, so normal. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Thank you for sharing. Thanks, Trish. Intrigued with process. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen to the PowerPoint. And I want to kind of lay a foundation of why we're even talking about all of this by talking a little bit about the stress response system. We just practiced pausing and tuning in, becoming aware of what we were feeling. That stop practice is a mindfulness practice. Mindfulness is all about gently, non-judgmentally noticing our present moment experience. And it can be really helpful for managing the stress response and working with the stress response, not stopping the stress response, but responding when we notice that we are getting to the far reaches of the stress response. So this is just a diagram, one way of looking at what happens in the body when we're under stress, and it's called the window of tolerance. It comes out of like polyvagal theory. But this green box in the middle, this window of tolerance, this is depicting that state when you feel like, okay, I can handle life. And it doesn't mean that you're feeling happy and butterflies all the time. You still experience challenging emotions in there, but also joyful ones. But it's that state of like, okay, I can do this. Sometimes our window feels very small when we've been under stress for a long time, or when something really, really big has happened, that window can shrink. And so I want to normalize that. If you're like, I don't know how to find my window, that might be because you've been under a lot of stress for a while. These practices can start to help gently finding ways to increase the window. You know, after a bad night of sleep, my window gets really shrunk. Or if it's, if I'm really hungry, the window is smaller. Things will irritate me that otherwise I could handle a little better. So just noticing where your window is. When we go outside of the window, that's when we go into a state of the stress response. We can go into hyperarousal, which is that fight or flight. We can also go into hypoarousal, which is more the freeze response. So there are some different symptoms that can help you recognize what is hyperarousal, what is hypoarousal. When we head into hyperarousal, that's when the heart rate gets going, the breathing gets more shallow, we're more emotionally reactive, more irritable. Sometimes we have a lot of thoughts that are just intrusively popping into the mind, just feeling on edge, on high alert. And it's really critical to know that there's really no emotional processing that happens while we're in the state of hyperarousal. We aren't able to complete the process of moving through an emotion. Now, hypoarousal, that's when the body really shuts down to help us survive. So numbing out emotionally, even numbing physically. Maybe you have the experience of you don't even notice how tense and tight you are until a week later when you throw out your back. You're like, how did that happen? And it had been this accumulation of stress for a long time. It's also really helpful to know that in hypoarousal, there's no emotional processing either. So we want to learn to detect earlier and earlier on when we're heading into these extremes and bringing ourselves back to the window of tolerance sooner and sooner. And those strategies are going to be a little bit different for each of us. But that stop practice at the beginning, that can be a practice that you can start to plug into different moments of your day to help you stop, pause, notice what's going on in the body, in the heart, in the mind, and to ask yourself, okay, what do I need right now? What do I really need? And it takes practice to start recognizing our needs, especially if we've been focusing so much on meeting others' needs for a long time. But the more we can check in frequently, the more we can return to that state of balance and recover from the stress response and actually develop resilience moving forward. Now, the strategies for coming out of hypoarousal tend to be a little bit different than hyperarousal. It's still helpful to use mindfulness with hypoarousal, but you might need to get up and actually move the body, even though that might be the opposite of what you feel like doing. If you're noticing extreme lethargy, getting up and doing a little mindful movement, which we'll do here in just a minute, could be really helpful. Hyperarousal, more of the grounding types of mindfulness, the still practices, even though it can be challenging, those can be helpful. I actually find mindful movement helpful for both hypo and hyperarousal to bring me back towards my window of tolerance. And then once I'm closer to my window of tolerance, I can settle and be still for longer. Any questions about the window of tolerance? How's this resonating for you? Feel free to either unmute or drop any comments in the chat. What do you think of this? Is it helpful? I hope so. This is part of the human experience. This is truly being human. Each of us has a stress response and a system that is geared towards keeping us alive. Okay, well, as we go along, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I just wanted to lay the foundation of really why we're doing the practices that we're doing here. I do want to mention while we're on this slide that an external stressor, so something happening, something that somebody else does, or a car cutting you off, or something that happens in your world, that is actually experienced the same in the body as an internal stressor or a mental event. So if we are stuck in rumination and we're replaying something that happened that was stressful, or we're imagining something that was stressful, the body will respond to it the same way as if it's actually happening right then and there. So learning how to get out of that rumination is really helpful. I definitely recognize hypoarousal. Oh, thank you for sharing, Amy. Thank you. All right, so the power of pausing, why it's helpful to take, even if it's just a minute, even if it's just when you go in the bathroom, if that's the only place you have to pause. I love these quotes from Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He wrote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. Sometimes that space feels really small if our window of tolerance is really shrunk down. But as we practice more and more, we can learn to create space. And in that space, discover that sense of freedom. Oh, I'm so glad you like that quote. Thanks, Julia. And then Viktor Frankl went on to say, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. All right, so moving forward, we're going to do a little mindful movement practice, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing because I think it might be helpful if you can see a larger picture of me as I guide us through the movement. I will try to give really explicit instructions so that you don't feel like you have to watch your screen if you don't want to, but if it's helpful to see the screen, I thought we'll take off the PowerPoint here for a minute. So we're just going to do a brief, gentle, mindful movement practice. You don't need to have any special flexibility or agility to be able to do this. Mindful movement is all about bringing our awareness into the body as we gently move, and we practice responding to whatever the body is communicating. So at any time, if I guide us through a stretch that doesn't feel quite right for your body, please listen to what you need and either don't do it or modify it in some way. And I think it might feel good to stand up a little bit. So I'm going to make sure you can still see me here in my room. You're going to see I have my cozy pants on, my comfy clothes. So if you'd like to go ahead and come to standing, if that works for you, and if not, you're welcome to stay sitting. But as you come to standing, just bringing your feet to be about hip width apart. And let's take a moment to just softly land here where the soles of the feet are. You might gently rock forward, coming up a little bit onto your toes, and then come back onto your heels. And then you might shift side to side. And then seeing if you can feel your way right into the center of the soles of your feet. That place where your body goes, ah. And engaging the core muscles, tucking the tailbone slightly to protect the lower back, and bringing the shoulders up to the ears and then dropping them down away from the ears. Just taking a moment here to take 2 or 3 full breaths. And then on your next inhalation, reaching the arms out to the sides and all the way overhead. Reaching the arms long and tall, really opening the body, even shifting side to side. And then gently releasing the arms down. And then again, inhaling. This time you might bend the knees and get even a larger range of motion. Inhaling and exhaling down, continuing at the rhythm of your own breath. Doing one more of these. And then resting the arms down at the sides. From here, sensing into the shoulders and the neck, and beginning to make some gentle shoulder rolls. Bringing the shoulders up towards the ears and then squeezing the shoulder blades together at the back and dropping the shoulders down again. Sensing into your shoulders and neck. And then reversing the direction of the shoulder rolls. Really squeezing the shoulders together in the front this time. And then allowing the shoulders to drop down. From here, bringing the left hand to the left hip and reaching your right arm up towards the ceiling. Really reaching long, and then if you'd like to, reaching over towards that left side so that you get a little bit of a crescent moon shape with your body, getting a really nice stretch there on the side of the body. And remembering to breathe. And then releasing the right hand down to the right hip, bringing the left hand up towards the ceiling, reaching tall and long. And then if you'd like to, reaching over. Thinking about keeping the heart lifted and open as much as possible. Breathing. And then releasing down. From here, let's take another full body stretch. Inhaling the arms overhead. And this time on your exhale, folding forward at the hips, bending or softening the knees, and coming into a full forward fold. You can hang with your elbows cradled in your hands, or you can just allow your arms and your hands to hang down. And then very slowly, one vertebra at a time, coming up like a rag doll, rolling the shoulders again. And then gently and with awareness, making your way back to your chair. As you sit here in your chair, just feeling your feet on the floor, maybe allowing your hands to rest in your lap, and taking a few breaths. Noticing how it feels to have gently moved the body and how it feels to be still again. All right, so that will conclude our very brief mindful movement practice for today. I hope that felt nourishing for you. Let's see here. We have one more practice that I really wanted to guide you through today. I know this has been practice heavy. Hopefully that feels good for you. But before we go into this last practice, I'll say a few words. So I'm going to share my screen again and just talk about this next practice, which is called the self-compassion break. Let's talk about self-compassion for a moment, shall we? As I mentioned before, self-compassion is really the twin sister of mindfulness. It's the other side of the coin. Mindfulness without self-compassion is just paying attention. And self-compassion without mindfulness may not be very grounded. So working together, they are this harmonious, beautiful, beautiful thing. So with mindfulness, we're gently paying attention to the present moment. With self-compassion, we're actively nurturing kindness toward ourselves, and we're connecting with a sense of common humanity, connecting with a sense of, I'm not alone. There are other people who have felt or are feeling this way too. think that's one reason why these networks are so beautiful. This ability to connect with common humanity, other people that are facing some of the same things, or at least similar things. While each of our experience is unique, we can find the threads of similarity, so that we know that these emotions we're grappling with are emotions that other people feel too. So this self-compassion break practice is a 3-part practice. And I do want to mention, I'm going to give you links for recordings for all of these practices, so you don't have to take notes on the 3 elements of them. The self-compassion break practice is a 3-part practice, and it comes from the work of Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer, who developed Mindful Self-Compassion, a course. And it involves mindfulness, and it involves actively connecting with a sense of common humanity, and then also practicing self-kindness. So I will guide us through this practice now. Coming to a comfortable sitting posture. You could even lie down if you're in your bedroom or on a cozy couch, just really getting into a comfortable posture, or getting a cozy blanket on your lap. That can help to support the warm qualities that we're trying to cultivate internally. So as you find yourself in this comfortable posture, closing your eyes if that's comfortable for you, or keeping them open, and just taking a few breaths, noticing how you are feeling now. It's really helpful to remember, especially I find during self-compassion practices, that it is truly okay whatever you end up feeling. There's not a way you're supposed to feel. It's like we are watering seeds of compassion, or even planting seeds of compassion. And sometimes it takes a little while of cultivating before we see the fruits of our efforts. So whatever you feel is okay. For the purpose of this practice tonight, we'll invite reflection on a recent, somewhat stressful event, something that on a scale of 0 to 10 was maybe a 4, a 5 at the most. Just something that is stressful enough so that when you think about it, you can remember it and remember how it felt, but not so stressful that you'd leave your window of tolerance. After you learn the basics of this practice, you'll then be able to use this practice on a daily basis whenever you need it. But we're just going to use a past experience to help us learn it. So scanning over the past few days and seeing if there's an experience that you had that stands out in your mind as something that was moderately stressful. And once you have identified an experience, just allowing that to be held in your awareness, intentionally recalling what happened and where you were. And seeing if you can get a sense of what this stress felt like in your body at the time. What emotions did you experience? What thoughts were you having when this happened? Noticing without judgment. This is not a time for problem solving or fixing, or certainly not judging ourselves. So just remembering back to, oh, how hard this was. This is the first part of the self-compassion break, which is the mindfulness part, actually acknowledging what it feels like in this moment. And maybe saying to yourself, oh, that was hard. This is stressful. or even this is a moment of suffering. Just anything to help you identify this is stress. Noticing where that stress is still registering in the body. And then moving to the next part of the self-compassion break, which is remembering that we're not alone and connecting with a sense of common humanity. So, as if you could widen your perspective beyond your own self, widening out to the larger world, and perhaps imagining that there's at least one other person in the county in which you live, the state, the country, or in the world, one other person who has felt these same emotions, who has felt the same category of stress, who's been worried, who's been angry. Seeing if you can just connect with this sense of, oh, this is part of being human. If the stress is related to something that you feel was a mistake you made, maybe even saying to yourself, oh, this is how it feels when we make mistakes. I'm not alone in this. Other people feel this way too. Other people are exhausted. Other people are worried. And now, transitioning to the third part of the self-compassion break, which is actively practicing self-kindness instead of self-judgment. So to do this, it can be helpful to imagine that you're talking to a dear friend that's going through the same struggle. Can you imagine what you would say to comfort a dear friend? Not to tell them how to fix it, but just to let them know that you're there with them, that you're there to support, that you hear them, that you see the goodness in them. What would you say to a dear friend? Now, can you offer those same words, those same kind, warm, comforting words to yourself, from yourself? The words may even just take the form of a wish to be kind, such as, may I be kind to myself in this moment. May I take care of myself. And if it's helpful, you could even bring some comforting, soothing touch, like a hand over the heart or grasping around the outsides of the arms. This can help to activate the caregiving system in us as mammals. Soothing touch and gentle words are powerful for calming the inner critic, calming the stress response. May I be kind to myself. May I take good care of myself. May I allow myself to learn from mistakes. May I accept myself. Or whatever the words are for you. And just noticing how that feels. And taking another few breaths. Releasing yourself from the focus of the practice when you are ready to. Resting in just an awareness of how things are for you now in this moment. Sensing your feet on the floor. Sensing your body supported by the chair. Maybe noticing the temperature of the air in the room against your skin. And if your eyes have been closed, just gently opening them. You may or may not have any words to put to this experience, but if you'd like to drop anything in the chat, you are more than welcome to. About how this self-compassion break felt for you. Thank you. Healing. I'm so glad it resonated. As I mentioned before, what we did tonight was kind of like training wheels. I don't think I said that specifically, but it was practice so that in the moment of a challenge or shortly thereafter, when you're noticing the inner critic coming up, when you're noticing the intense emotions gripping you, you can pause, you can bring awareness, that mindfulness of, okay, this is a moment of suffering, this is a moment of struggle. And then maybe taking a breath and connecting again with that sense of common humanity. Oh, I'm not alone in this. There are other people that feel this way too. Maybe even other people who are on the call here tonight who feel this way too. And then actively offering yourself kindness, either through kind words or soothing touch or reaching out for support. That's an act of kindness. Well, thank you, Karen. Labeling the experience and the emotions is helpful. Yes, so helpful. What we know from the research is that if we can give a name, a label to our emotions, it helps to bring the prefrontal cortex back online faster. It goes offline in moments of high stress. So labeling emotions helps us inch our way back towards that window of tolerance. Thank you. Well, you have been so gracious to let me join you tonight. I want to share one more slide, and that's just a page about the resources that are available through the Davis Mindfulness Center, which is part of Davis Behavioral Health. We offer community classes that are open to anyone, no cost associated. That's what I'm trying to say. They're open for the community. You don't need to have a specific kind of insurance or anything. We are here to, as part of our prevention services. And I've included our website, dbhutah.org/mindfulness is our main website. But then if you add on the word, the /resources, then that will take you particularly to our resources page where there are audio practices of all the practices I guided you through, plus more. And we also have some links to some video practices that were recorded right here from the same room during the quarantine part of COVID. And then, as I mentioned, we have community classes for adults and community classes for youth. And this is a picture of our mindfulness center space. If you feel able to come in person, we love visiting in person. And we're located in Layton. Our classes are mainly for those in Davis County, but for those outside of the county, if we have space available, then we welcome you also. Okay, well, that takes me to the end of my presentation. I think I'll drop our website link in the chat just for easy access. And thank you so much for spending an hour with me.
I really appreciate being here, Rachel, and you've given us some tools. You know, it's not just something we listened to, but we got to experience. I really appreciate that. We do have a workshop survey that has come up. There's just, I think, 4 or 5 questions. And if there's anyone that has topics that they would like us to address with the Family to Family Network, if you could just let us know. We want to offer things that are helpful and that people are interested in.
Rachel, this is Julia. Would you be open to any questions if folks have any questions?
Yes, I completely forgot that. Please, let's open it up for questions.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone on? That was amazing. I have done a few of those practices over the years to help through some really tough situations with our son. So are there any questions for Rachel from what y'all have experienced tonight? I have found myself being much calmer. Any questions? Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Julia.
Okay, then I'm going to start with one for myself and come on with my camera, actually. So there's a question from Melinda. Let's start with Melinda's question.
Great. So we have classes for adults and teenagers right now. It's less frequently that we have classes for young children, unfortunately. We are geared mostly towards seeing how we can support the adults so they can support their children at home. Oh, 16. Yes, we do have classes for teens. In fact, we have a virtual class for teens that's going to be starting in a few weeks. So if you hop on our website and you go to classes and then classes for teens, you should be able to find that. Oh, the Viktor Frankl quote again. Yes, let me copy and paste that right in the chat. Let's do that because that is a favorite one. Let's see. Other questions?
So I do have a question. How often would you recommend beginning some of this mindfulness practice, the pause or the self-compassion? I love that third part of the self-compassion. What would we say to a friend? We're always so much more kind in our words and our thoughts to a friend. How often would you suggest that people start with a mindfulness practice or self-compassion or those other things? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Julia. Really, it can be helpful to have a set aside time every day to make sure you do it. Like even if you start with 5 minutes once a day, that can be really helpful so that a week doesn't go by and you're like, oh, I forgot about that mindfulness thing. But then as often as you can incorporate it into your day. I have a coworker who every time she puts her hand on a doorknob, she practices a little brief stop practice. She pauses, she takes a breath, observes, and then proceeds. So finding little times of your day, like maybe it's every time you go to the bathroom or something like that, where you can use the stop practice, say, or pausing and checking in using that self-compassion break is really helpful as well. So I'd say at least once a day, even if it's just for 5 minutes, but as many little doses as you can get is a good thing. Let's see. Oh, Catherine, thank you for sharing. Didn't want to get up and do the stretching, but glad you did. Surprisingly nice. I'm so glad. There's a little mindful movement recording on that page of resources. So if you want some guided stretching, there's some there as well. Anything else?
I have a question. I am just wondering, so with me as a mom, I'm like constantly going and going and going. And then when I take mindfulness, for a minute, I like focus on my breathing. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you needed to do this, or you needed to send that text, or you needed to do this. And then it's like, I'll stop what I'm doing and go back to it. And it's like, how do you calm the distraction? Is it just practice till you can finally get it? Or is there tips?
Oh, Julianne, you sound so normal. I just want to say that first. That is such a common experience. I think it's a balance of remembering that with mindfulness, we're not trying to push any thoughts out of our minds. Sometimes when we actually stop, it's like the mind goes, oh, I've got your attention. Now I can tell you all the things you need to do. I know some people who keep a little notepad next to them. And at the end of a mindfulness practice, they write down everything that feels really important so they can tell their mind, I will get back to you later. We'll attend to that. But it is practice. We're strengthening a part of the brain that helps us to come back to the present moment over and over. And so if you just notice that your brain is going to planning a lot, or maybe to worrying or problem solving, you might even say, oh, planning, and then just come back to your breath. Or, oh, there's that worry thought. Let that be like a cloud passing through the sky and coming back to your breath. The more you come back to the present moment, it's like strengthening a muscle. But just know that the wandering mind is a part of the practice. Did I answer that for you? Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you so much. That's very helpful. I appreciate it.
Okay, you are absolutely 100% normal. Yeah.
Okay, and then I guess a follow-up too. So I have a daughter with autism, and she has struggles to like focus, like trying to do mindfulness or meditation is really hard. So what is a good step? Is it just like, I've tried to work with her to be able to do it in her calm times, but how can I help her? What is like a basic step to getting her?
Yeah. One thing I would say is, in my experience, anything that's sensory, so practicing mindfulness through a sensory experience, so mindful listening, mindful seeing, tactile, that is a great way to go, because it can be so abstract to otherwise for those on the autism spectrum. So I would recommend trying to do more of a sensory type of a mindfulness practice.
Thank you. I hadn't thought of that, but that's brilliant. So thanks.
Okay, good. Oh, I love this, Melinda. The sharks at the aquarium work for my daughter. Oh, that's great. That is great. Well, anything else that I can answer? Oh, beginning kid yoga with the OT at school. That's an excellent idea. Mindful movement. Yes. I love this.
Would you be able to share your PowerPoint that we can share out with those who registered?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to send, if I just send Karen a copy, would that work?
That should work. And then we can then take it out to those who registered. We had about half of our folks here, which is great. 50% is really, really great. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Karen, would you like to finish up, say anything else about next month's meeting?
We are moving into our DSPD night. Is our next meeting. We meet the second Thursday of each month. Hopefully we'll be in person at some point, but for the time frame now, we are doing Zoom. So we have a DSPD night. We're going to be doing something about police and safety with our kiddos. And just, we have some good things coming up. So check back in and let us know what else we can offer for you guys. And check into the Utah Parent Center website as well. There's so much there for you, for everyone as a resource. So thank you for coming.
Thank you again, Karen and Julia. It was great to be with you. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rachel. Rachel is amazing.
Yeah, that was good.